Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're focusing on the Village of Maywood, Illinois. We've pulled together information from, well, a few places. A recent CFA podcast, some official documents, website details, and interestingly, responses, or sometimes the lack of response, to public records requests. Our aim here is really to sift through all this and pinpoint the key issues, the main questions that seem to be emerging, just trying to give you a clearer picture of what might be going on in Maywood.
Exactly. And what we're looking at, it isn't just, random bits and pieces. The sources seem to point towards a potentially complex situation. It touches on how data is being handled, this apparently new nonprofit, and quite a few unanswered questions about key people in the village administration.
It's definitely an interesting look at local government stuff, accountability, and all that.
For sure.
Okay, let's get right into it then. So first up, the newly elected officials in Maywood, they're being sworn in Tuesday, May 20th.
Right.
Now, a public inauguration, you'd think it's just open, right?
Right.
Show up. But the Coalition for Accountability, the CFA, they've raised some flags about the RSVP process.
Yeah, this is quite notable. To go to this public event, and apparently this has been the case for newsletters and other event info for about 4 years. You have to RSVP. And you do that through a Google form. But the form isn't run by the village itself. It's actually created inside Astute Culture Consulting.
Which is Mayor Booker's own company.
That's right, the mayor's private company.
Okay, so right away that makes you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The CFA also points out that if you look at the official Village of Maywood website, there's no privacy policy or any kind of disclaimer saying how your personal info collected by the mayor's company might be used. And it goes further, the links on the Village site, for signing up for newsletters or community events. They also seem to send your submission either to Astute Culture Consulting, LLC, or this other group, Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc.
So you're on the Village website thinking you're interacting with the village.
Exactly. But your data is potentially going to one of these external places.
Precisely. And that leads to a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? Is there actually a formal service contract or any agreement between the village and these two entities to handle village communications and data?
Good question.
And even more basically, maybe, why is the mayor's private company collecting personal data from residents for what seems like official village business? What are the implications there for privacy, for transparency? It's unclear.
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions, and this is where it gets maybe even more tangled. Let's zero in on that second organization you mentioned, Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc. The CFA started asking, okay, who's paying for their events? They had this Unity in the Community celebration and dinner and quarterly luncheons, too.
And interestingly, the RSVP process for those events, it was the same setup, again, pointing outside the village structure.
Right. So the CFA filed some public records requests, FOIA request, back on March 14th this year. They asked specifically about agreements or payments connected to the building at 200 S Fifth Avenue involving all these groups. They asked about any rent paid to the village and, crucially, any agreements or payments from Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc. itself, covering the period from October 2023 to that March date.
Pretty specific requests. And the village's official response?
Basically nothing. They came back saying, after looking, they found no records responsive to the request.
No records. Despite these events happening, this organization being involved.
Seems odd, right?
It really does. So the CFA decided to do a bit of their own digging, independent checking. They looked up Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc. in the IRS database for tax-exempt organizations. Result: not found.
Okay, so not showing up as tax-exempt with the IRS, at least based on that search.
But then they checked the Illinois Secretary of State filings, and there the corporation is listed. It says active. It was incorporated as a not-for-profit on January 16th, 2024. File number 744-46965.
January 2024. So it's a very new entity, registered with the state as a nonprofit, but maybe not yet formally tax-exempt, or at least not showing up that way. And they checked the Cook County Clerk's office, too, for any, assumed business names.
They did. Also not found. But the connections, they get a bit clearer when you look at the 2025 annual report that Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc. filed with Illinois, the people listed in charge. You've got Nathaniel George Booker as president and executive director.
The mayor.
The mayor. Then Lenarge Booker as secretary, Dolores Morrison as a director, and this is significant. Tori Guerin, who is the current Village of Maywood clerk, is also listed as a director of this nonprofit.
Okay, hang on. Let's try and piece this together. We've got the mayor's private company handling resident data for village stuff. Then we have this brand new nonprofit, Healthy Maywood West Cook, Inc., where the mayor is president and the village clerk is a director. And the village itself says it has no records of agreements or payments with this nonprofit.
That's the picture painted by these documents and responses, yeah.
It really makes you ask, what is the relationship here between the mayor, the official village government, and this external nonprofit? And, I mean, the village clerk being a director there, what are the implications of that?
These are exactly the kinds of questions about, transparency, potential conflicts of interest that seem to be swirling. And that leads us into another pretty significant area the sources touch on, the village manager.
Right. Okay.
There's an agenda for a May 22nd retreat special board meeting, and one item is the village manager's annual performance review. Now, this is interesting because it comes up while the village has been giving non-responsive answers to a whole bunch of CFA, FOIA requests about the current village manager, Frank Torres.
No, we're not talking about minor stuff they asked for, are we?
Mm-hmm.
The CFA asked about his membership in the ICMA, the International City County Management Association. Proof of membership. Is he following their code of ethics?
Standard professional stuff.
Exactly. And details about professional development, like conferences or seminars he attended paid for by the village. What did they cost? Which specific events, like ICMA, IML, NLC conferences? Basic accountability questions, you'd think.
All met with non-responsive.
Every time.
And it doesn't stop there. The CFA also brought up issues with filing critical financial reports. According to the Illinois State Controller's website data they cited, the village's 2023 annual financial report, which was due back in April 2023, was filed late. And the 2024 report, due October 2024, hasn't been filed at all.
It's not filed at all. That seems...
It's a big deal. And also, required annual TIF reports haven't been filed since 2023. And guess who the TIF administrator is?
Let me guess. The village manager.
The village manager. So, yeah, these are pretty fundamental duties for a municipality that seem to be lagging based on this information.
Wow. Okay. And then there were questions about his actual performance review, right? Apparently, his contract said he was due a review in December 2024, and another one was scheduled for April 2025. The CFA asked, okay, when did these happen? Who actually did the evaluation?
Again, the response cited was non-responsive.
And they even asked about a $5,000 performance bonus he apparently received. They wanted the justification for that, especially if, a satisfactory annual review hadn't actually been done.
Non-responsive on that, too. And one more layer. The CFA asked if the village manager got formal approval to keep working his side job as a licensed real estate broker.
Oh, interesting. Potential conflict of interest there, too.
That's the concern, yeah. Needs transparency. And the village's answer on whether approval was granted and when.
Let me guess. Non-responsive.
You got it. Consistent pattern.
Okay, but there was one point that seemed particularly striking. It was about his qualifications.
Yes. His academic credentials, his resume, reportedly, says he got a master's degree in organizational leadership public administration from Lewis University in 2010.
Okay.
But the CFA pointed to information from Lewis University's own graduate program's website. And according to that source, there wasn't actually a public administration master's program offered in that specific format back then. And the organizational leadership master's program they do have, it's listed as being 100% online. So there seems to be a discrepancy noted by the CFA between the claimed degree and what the university website indicates was available.
That raises some pretty fundamental questions, doesn't it, about the accuracy of his stated qualifications?
It certainly does. Were the proper checks done during hiring? Is he meeting the terms of his employment based on, accurate credentials? The lack of answers from the village on all these other points just makes these questions about his qualifications seem even more pressing for the people in Maywood.
Definitely. And just one final point from that May 22nd meeting agenda, item 9B2B, is a motion to approve a resolution adopting the Village of Maywood Civility Pledge.
Ah, the Civility Pledge.
Yeah. And you kind of have to look at that in the context of everything else we've just discussed, for all these questions about transparency, about data, about the manager's performance and qualifications. And then there's a push for a Civility Pledge.
The timing is interesting, let's say. Does it address the core issues being raised, or is it perhaps something else?
Yeah, makes you wonder.
So if we just kind of step back for a second and look at the whole picture here from these sources, you see this pattern, right? You've got recurring questions about how resident data is being handled, potentially by entities linked closely to leadership, but sort of outside the official village structure. You've got this real lack of clarity around a new nonprofit that has the mayor and the village clerk involved, no records of payments or agreements according to the village. And then This wall of silence, these non-responsive answers when it comes to basic information about the village manager, his performance, his qualifications, even following basic financial reporting rules.
Yeah, the threads really seem to weave together, pointing towards um, maybe a lack of openness in some pretty key areas of how the village is run.
Seems that way, based on this information.
For me, the real sort of aha moments, if you can call them that, are seeing that direct pipeline, potentially, of resident data going into the mayor's private company. That's number one. Then, the kind of murky status and the direct connections of this healthy Maywood West Cook nonprofit, and just the sheer volume of unanswered basic questions about the village manager. It really paints a picture where just getting fundamental information seems like a real challenge.
And that really brings us to the final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. What does it really mean when a local government appears, well, unwilling or maybe unable to provide basic answers, to be transparent about how it operates, who it works with, who's in charge? If you were a resident of Maywood, what other questions would you be asking after hearing all this?
Yeah.
It really underscores, I think, why people need to be engaged civically, why demanding transparency and accountability at that local level is just so, so important.